welcome to Restaurantopia. Today, we have Chef Anthony Hamilton, self-proclaimed cook.
Yeah, that's true.
Talking about menu costing, the best way, the easy way, and what you'll need to get started. Imagine a perfect world where you can build a restaurant, open the doors, and make loads of money. Unfortunately, those days are over. It takes great leadership, hard work, and long hours to operate a successful restaurant. Together, we can make it happen. This is Restaurantopia. Anthony.
Yeah, does that feel good? You digested that for a second.
Really
yeah, good.
It
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
I had to breathe it in.
Yeah, so as consulting with a lot of restaurants over the past, I started with you 6 years ago. So in consulting over the past 6 years with independent restaurants, we know that one of their weaknesses, and this is no offense to anybody, it's a lack of infrastructure, right? And you saw this during your DSR days, and you see it every day now. The independent restaurant, as you know, we love it, but the owner or the manager often wears a dozen hats. So they have to pick and choose which things make the biggest impact. And we talk about something like menu costing, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work involved in menu costing. Yeah. Lots of work. You're talking maybe to cost out your menu initially could be upwards of 40 hours. And you look at it and say, is this imperative in my daily operations? And it doesn't necessarily help more people come into the door. It doesn't necessarily help grill that steak. It doesn't necessarily help serve that table. It doesn't help directly with those things. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes I think it gets pushed to the back burner. Mm-hmm. See what I did there? It was clever, huh? Yeah. So it gets pushed to the back burner because it takes so much work, and you don't yield the impact right away. Right. But I can tell you, without it, it's a travesty to operate without it. Right. And I think
it's a lot of luck.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. It is.
And it's missing out on a lot of opportunity.
Well, and truth be told, a lot of operators do cost out their menu in their head. They say, okay, this steak cost me $10, $30 menu price, done.
Well, I'm not saying there's not thought process put into the menu price.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, to have it dialed in and know exactly where you're at, yeah.
Well, it's like you always told me, what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. It's plain and simple, right? Did you come up with that?
I think Brian actually was the one that told me.
No, I think, is it? Is it Brian? Brian, did you say that?
Brian Drucker, I think, was his name.
Brian Drucker, gotcha. That's a couple episodes ago.
He has a brother, Peter, who's much less famous, but yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking a couple episodes ago about profitability, and I was about to adopt the not being profitable is irresponsible. Mm-hmm. Because we've said it so many times, like a guy I knew or a guy I met said it. It's like about time we claim that, right? Yeah, because no one knows.
It's definitely over 3, no question.
Yeah, no question. So if we go by the Marzik rule of quotes, I think we win in that regard. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
It's actually the Uncle John rule of quotes.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was Uncle John.
That was Uncle John.
God, I'm citing all the wrong sources today.
Thank you, John Matthews.
Yeah, John, if you're listening out there, buddy, you've had an impact on all of us.
Oh, he's listening.
Yeah, lasting impact, man. So anyway, what doesn't get measured gets managed. It doesn't get managed, right? And so, again, we talked about how you can look into this because it happens. We measure our bank accounts, and there's some thought process going into menu pricing. The problem is you don't know, and I'm dealing with this right now with an operator, and everything looks okay, right? But when I started working on their prime costs and started measuring their all-in labor and their all-in cost of goods sold and compared to their sales, they're at like 72%.
Okay.
Right.
Not great.
Not great. Not the end of the world in today's day and age. And everything's okay. And the owner's making money and they're moving along. Mm-hmm. But when I look at the managers and I say, hey, okay, where do we need to make improvements? What's their answer? Where do you start? You don't know because you have no benchmarks. Yeah. You have nothing in place that says this dish or this area is either performing well or not performing well. Right. So when you deal with that, and to your point, we rely on luck. When the luck runs out, what do you do? When the bank account starts looking smaller and smaller due to inflation, supply chain, all these things we deal with, what do you do? Where do you go? Right. So the easy move is let's just raise menu prices. Right. Blanket approach. How effective is that? Probably not super effective, right? It works in the short run, but there's all sorts of collateral damage that comes along with that. You got to be calculated,
sure,
right? And the fact is, if you're losing money, you don't know where you're losing money. And this particular operator, they had a crab cake on their menu for months and months, right? And these are amazing operators, by the way. They do a tremendous job. Great chef, great managers, great culture. One of the best cultures I've ever seen. But this is the one area where they're lacking. And I had them cost out menus. I'm teaching how to cost stuff out. I'm like, here you go. Here's your homework. I'll come back in a couple weeks. And he did. He's a great student, and he wants to learn, and it's awesome. And he costs out his crab cakes. He's running like 90% food costs on him. 90% food costs. He had no idea. So it's one of their most popular items.
And isn't that interesting? Like, you talk so positively about the operator, great operator, all this stuff, great business, all these things. That's what I found in my DSR days, going out as a rep, talking to, restaurateurs all the time.
Yeah.
And, you're always going to hear like, hey, my food cost is too high.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's your food cost running?
Ah.
And they're like, well, it's running 45%. And I'm like, well, what's your menu supposed to run?
Right.
Deer in the headlights.
Right.
Because they're like, what do you mean supposed to?
Yeah, 45.
It's running 45. Oh, I know it's running 45, but like, what does your menu cost it out to run?
Right. So maybe it's not your food cost that's bad. Maybe your food cost is amazing. Maybe your strategy
Maybe your
behind
menu
food
is priced at 45.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And so my next bullet point is theoretical versus reality. So your theoreticals are what your food cost is supposed to be. So this is before you open the doors, or even if you recalibrate per our suggestion, which let's hope that's the case. You say, okay, this dish is priced out at this and costed out at this, and it should run 30%, right? It should run. Yeah. So when you say my food cost is 45, my menu should be 33. I have a variance there now that I have to address.
Yeah.
But now I have a pinpoint. Now I can say, look, we have a variance. Okay, so where's the variance coming from? Well, it's coming from waste. It's coming from theft. It's coming from lack of portioning. It's coming from certain controls. Sure. But at least now we have a pinpointed strategy to go attack this loss, right? Because before we had no idea.
No, you don't know where you start. What do you do?
That's precisely it.
Get the food cost down.
Yeah. Okay, how?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So in this instance, it's like, okay, so do we just do a blanket approach on everything? I imagine that strategy in life, right? If you just took a blanket approach to everything, like it's not good, right? Especially in things like war or something. You're just going to carpet bomb the whole place. Like, no, you have a pinpointed strategy, right? Like you have targets and they're strategic and everything else, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. So it comes back to strategy. So, and my next bullet point was, so your food cost is high. How do you know?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, because I learned this from you actually, and it's precisely why I was bringing this up. So we look at this theoretical versus reality. The theoretical, again, is when you cost out your menu what it's supposed to be, and then the reality is what your actual purchases are over sales with your inventory in mind, right? So that's where it comes down to. So we can pinpoint it based on staff performance portion, to revisit that. So keeping your fingers on the pulse tells the story of profitability, in my opinion, right? You're great at making money, but are you making as much as you should be? And I see this a lot of times with operators who say, well, I'm wildly successful. I don't need to do this. But it's like, do you realize that you could be way more successful, financially?
Listen, a couple percentage points to the bottom line is a big deal.
That's a couple vacations or a new car, buddy.
Yeah,
there's no question about that, man. So let's talk about costing your menu. We know why you should cost a menu, right? That's evidently clear at this point in time. So, and I know times are tough with staffing and everything else. I know it's difficult, right? But you really got to somehow take the time out, or hire someone to do this, or pay one of your staff members to do this, or bring in a consultant and have them help you along with the format. Now, consultants generally won't do the entire thing for you. I'm just speaking from a place of self-preservation. But I can definitely set you up with something like this, right? As can many other people who are in my shoes.
Well, and I'd like to just make a note, again, going back to my DSR days. I shouldn't say never. I did it once and then would never do it again. I never spent time on this project with an operator that didn't get involved with me.
Yeah.
Because you will spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
And if they don't keep up on it, or they don't, see the value in it, or they
right.
whatever, like everybody will take free work.
Yep.
You got to have an operator that's going to actually get engaged and put some of the sweat equity into this project.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like the SWOT analysis episode we did. It's talking about, like,
it was a great episode.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Thanks
amazing.
for joining me.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was invigorating and enlightening, all those things. But the truth is, if you're not going to take any action on it, then maybe it's not worth the work. But I highly implore you to take some action on this, because it directly equates to your bottom line and sometimes your top line, depending. So the best way to do menu costing, right? This is the one that everybody's scared of. You got to know all your costs coming in from your invoices and your purveyors. And I can only imagine this gets a little easier in a digital world, just because when I was in operations, like, apps and order guides and things were just coming out. This wasn't like, we only worked from invoices. We didn't have an electronic way to consolidate, filter, copy, paste, anything like that, right? You got to know your recipes. And this is a big one. Like, it's not enough to cost out your menu. You got to cost out your recipes too, because they feed your menu items, right? And I think this is where trips a lot of people up, is it's easy enough to say, okay, my steak is $10. I'm going to charge $30 for it. And I'm going to live by the markup 3 times rule. 33% cost rule is a golden standard, and everything's fine. But when you have that recipe that contains a funky ingredient like saffron or something that's wildly expensive, and you don't account for that, you have a big problem, right?
Here's one other thing.
Yeah.
This is a deterrent to doing this, because how many situations does the restaurateur get in? And again, you get into a project and then it gets difficult and it feels like work, and then you abandon it because something else becomes more shiny or maybe more easy or whatever it is. You're going through recipes that maybe you don't have a recipe, and maybe it's a little willy-nilly. And then you're like, ooh, I actually have to have a recipe.
Yeah. That's a rabbit hole all about consistency there, right? Now all of a sudden we're talking about consistency. I think I wrote about that in a newsletter ago or two. I think it was last week I wrote about that, because it came up how important consistency is. We all realize it, but I don't think we take enough measures to ensure it. Recipes are the gold standard for that, right? So you got to cost those out. You got to know your portions. This is another area where I don't see enough build sheets, right? So that line cook knows a scoop, a spoonful of rice and a spoonful of potatoes and a hunk of chicken is all good. But it should be clearly defined what your expectations are. It should be
Tell me what a build sheet is.
a build sheet. So it's kind of like a portion guide. So for every dish, you'll see, hopefully, you'd see a picture of the dish executed perfectly, the gold standard, the brand standard, right? When you do the menu rollout or menu development, the person in charge shows what their vision is on a dish, perfectly plated, nice picture. This is exactly what it should look like every time. And then you say, okay, it's going to be one 12-ounce New York strip steak, whatever choice, right? And then it's going to be 4 ounces of mashed potatoes, and it's going to be 3 ounces of green beans, and it just lists how many ounces.
How you build that plate.
That's exactly right,
okay.
right? And it's portion control, because then you're at least at that point in time, your staff knows their expectations. Because how many times have you seen where you go to a restaurant and one time you get a nice 4-ounce scoop of mashed potatoes, and the next day you go and you get 8 ounces of mashed potatoes, and it depends on the cook and who trained that cook and what their thought process was, or who the manager was and what they preferred.
Yeah, or the pizza where the guy working at night's got the really big hand and the girl working for lunch shift's got a really small hand, and the cheese just doesn't seem to be consistent.
Listen, if you don't have a bowl with a scale under it at your pizza station, please do. Please.
Or you know what's really cool is diced cheese.
Really?
Measuring cup.
Yeah. Okay.
Diced cheese is really cool.
I've never seen diced cheese.
Oh yeah, that's awesome portion control in a pizza place.
No kidding.
If I owned a pizza place, I'd use diced cheese.
Really? Like the little nubs?
Yeah.
Like little pellets? Huh. I never even thought about that. So
Google diced cheese on YouTube. You probably see and even the way you can put it on the pizza, and then the way you can just take the pizza like this and it just rolls down and spreads evenly.
No kidding.
It's pretty cool.
Huh.
Yeah, check it out.
Huh, you just blew my mind. I was a huge proponent. I ran a pizza place for a long time. Huge proponent of the scale. Because the one thing is mass never lies. Volume can lie to you.
Sure.
If I have one cook that packs the cheese into that measuring cup, or one cook that
and that's why the diced is a little more accurate than a shred. Because
absolutely, because there's less variance in the volume. But when I put a scale there and I put a bowl or a 6 pan on top of it and I zero it out, and then I just put handfuls of cheese in there until it tells me 10 ounces, 12 ounces what I'm putting on a pizza, that there's no cheating that system if they follow it. The volume, the packing, there's no variables, right?
Sure.
So anyway, I digress. So know your portions in your build sheets, and then have all three in check, and then you get to calculating, right? Is really what it comes down to. So that takes a long time. It's not easy. You got to really put in the work. So I'm thinking of this like, dude, over the past 6 years, I've worked so much on this with so many different operators. And to your point, maybe 20% of them actually drink the water once you lead them down to it.
Yeah.
Maybe 20% actually see, like, okay, it's worth it to do that work. Most of them say, that's a lot of work. I see the value, but I don't have the time or whatever to do it, right? So I've been thinking for so long how to do it the easy way. And I talked about this in an episode with Brian. It was like 9 kitchen management systems you have to do. And I felt so strongly about this, I wanted to kind of extrapolate it from that conversation and just focus on it this. We used to do this at a restaurant I worked at back in the day. This is 20 years ago now. Painful even saying that. But I was an extern coming out of school, in the middle of school, I should say. And I was always pretty privy to spreadsheets and numbers. I liked them. And I worked with the chef. He was my first mentor. He pretty much taught me 90% of what I know.
Yeah.
And I had some really great mentors along the way too, but this was like my foundation. So he just kept it really simple. And he never explained it to me, and I didn't realize probably to a couple years ago exactly what he was doing. He did this thing called a Q factor, right? And you can call it whatever you want, X factor, Q factor, who cares? It doesn't matter. He took his menu and he looked at, like, he didn't want to cost the whole thing out. He just doesn't have a penchant for that. So he took like 5, 6 side dishes and he costed those out. Then he averaged them. And that was it. So then he came up with it. He says, you know what? My average size cost me about $2. I'm going to throw an extra 25 cents on there to cover my dish detergent, my silverware wraps, and whatever else, right?
Now all of a sudden you've got a formula that says you've got your main entree, which is a little bit more digestible, and you go $2.25.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. I love that.
Right. So and I put this restaurant I'm working on, this system, and to that chef's credit, he's latched on, and it's amazing.
Nice.
Because there's no way I'm going to get this guy to cost out his full menu, especially it's a seasonal menu, changes every 3 months. So then all of a sudden it becomes very futile, the efforts, right? Because you just got the costing done, now you got to switch the menu again and start over. So we just averaged out a bunch of his side dishes.
And I love the fact that you put a little buffer on it.
Oh yeah.
And raise it a little bit so that, because you should be on the higher end so that you're pricing it appropriately.
Err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
And what we're accounting for is waste or misportioning and protecting our bank account from those things, right? So we use this Q factor, and then I set up a sheet for him this was given to me by the chef, and it would take the portion price of your center of the plate item, your steak, your chicken, your salmon, because let's face it, that's the most important thing, right? Because if you get those prices wrong, you're shot.
Right.
But that's what everybody relies on now. So why not just lean on that a little bit? Why not just make a spreadsheet of your top 15 items, or your top entrees or appetizers, and then you say, okay, what's my protein price? This is easily digestible. It's easy to take from the invoice. You just put it right on the spreadsheet. your Q factor is already there in the column. You know, it's $2.25, $2.50. Maybe in a family restaurant, it's $1.50. Fine dining is $2.50.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah,
it doesn't matter. So now I got the $10 for the steak. Remember in the example I gave you, $10 for a steak. I'm going to charge $33 for it. That is the golden rule, right? So, but I'm not taking into account my side dishes. I'm only taking into account my protein. So now I'm running like a 40% food cost on this rather than 33. So we go back earlier and kind of close this circle. It's like, well, I'm at 45%. It's too high, right? Well, what's it supposed to be? I don't know. Well, if you do this, at least you have. Maybe you're not 100% accurate, but at least you're 75% accurate.
Right.
That's a hell of a lot better than where you were when you started, right? So we use this Q factor thing. It's two numbers to plug in. You take the steak plus the $2.50. Now all of a sudden you got $12.50. Now all of a sudden you got $37.50 in your menu price. That's a big difference from the $30 we were talking about earlier, right? Yeah. But now you're covering bases. Now you're actually as profitable as you should be because you're taking everything into account.
Yeah, love it.
Could you drill down the details? Absolutely, you could. But I could argue with this system, it's probably more worth it, most independent operations, given that you wear multiple hats and you're so busy, that you could rely on this. Absolutely. And you could be more than fine. And it only takes you, once you get it set up in a couple hours, is really all it takes. And then once a week, it's about a 15-minute adjustment just to update your center of the plate items. And then you have a real deal costing.
Yeah.
And it's like you always told me, it's like, listen, if you're going to manage on bad data, just make sure you consistently manage on that bad data. And this is a prime example of that. And the data's not even that bad. It's still a B or a B plus data. And to a lot of operators, it's not worth it to put in that 40 hours. Well, here you go. Here's the way in 15 minutes. So that to me is the easy way. That's the best way, or not the best way. That's the best way is to do it. All the push-ups, right? I harp on effectiveness a lot, meaning the best possible outcome. This is one of those areas in life where I'm like, I understand the effectiveness is really hard to achieve. So let's dial it back and be realistic. But the easy way is what we talked about, and you do it on top of your head, or you just simply add up all your purchases for the week and divide by sales. If you're going to do anything else, at least do that, right? At least do that, and at least keep track of your food costs, because again, if you're not measuring it, it's not getting managed, and quite frankly, this is a direct correlation to your bottom line. So a couple pitfalls we got to worry about. Yield percentage, be wary of that. You familiar with yield percentage?
As far as when you're taking a knife to something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, things like bell peppers, or things like steaks. If you're butchering your own steaks or cutting them off a strip loin, like you're going to have some loss. You're going to have some shrink. You're going to have some trim.
Yeah.
You got to account for that, right? So make sure you account for that, because that's a big one. Don't get lost in food cost percentage. Always keep in mind gross profit, and then always keep in mind the effect on prime cost too. How your higher ticket items, that steak example, let's say we ran a 40% food cost on that steak, but we had a huge gross profit. That's more than fine.
Yeah.
And you ask me why? Is because, well, that's double the price of my normal menu items. So it elevates my sales to a point where it actually dramatically impacts labor in the opposite direction, because a lot of sales and labor percentage are indirectly related. As one goes up, the other goes down.
Right.
Plain and simple, right? So there's no arguing that. So if you drive higher sales, your labor percentage goes down.
Right.
So I would rather run the 40% food cost with 10% labor than the 30% food cost with 20% labor.
Right.
Does that make sense? And that's it. That was my last bullet point. I got really
That's it.
excited. Yeah. I felt like
You're on a roll, man.
I know. And it just came to a stop, right?
Yeah.
So tell me this, though, Dave, before we get off this episode, is as a DSR, your primary goal, and I know your personality type, you're a coordinator, and you love helping people. You love propping people up. That's your jam, right?
Sure.
And you've done an amazing job of that as long as I've known you.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, that's true. Not so much Brian, but you. Yeah, it's good. Brian breaks people down, right? That's what he does.
Builds them back up.
Dude, I'm completely kidding. He's amazing. So that being said, what's it like when you consult? Because DSRs, or your sales reps, are the ultimate consultants. You were one for quite some time. That's how you got your comeuppance. And you were very effective from what I gather. That's why you're in the position you're in. What was it? What was the difference? Explain to me and explain to the audience maybe. When you approach a restaurant that has some semblance of a costing system in place, how much more effective were you from a consulting standpoint?
Way more, because again, it all comes back to the data. It all comes back to you can ask a question, but if you don't know the answer, it's tough to make any progress. You know what I mean? Like, or you see I need to improve, but you don't know where to start because you don't have any of the, so for somebody, if I'm understanding your question properly, for somebody that's got some costing system set up, it was way easier to consult because you can actually start talking about things that create results, not questions that you have in how it's done. That make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. Actually generate results.
Yes.
Right. So you're skipping past all the minutia, you slog through the muck, and now you're at the point where every move I make now has a dramatic impact on my profitability.
Correct. Yeah, you're making progress.
And I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And for you chefs out there, or kitchen managers out there, if you have your menu costed out and you have an idea of how your dishes are performing, you disarm your critics pretty quickly. If ownership or the GM sits you down and says, hey, your food cost is out of whack, or our costs are out of whack, or maybe they just zoom out and they say, our profitability isn't high and we think it's food cost, you can slap that paper down on the table and say, listen, I agree with you, our cost battle line, but I tell you it's not food cost, right? Because you have this data done.
Right,
So it's a great defense mechanism.
Well, and just knowing your business, right? Working on your business and not in your business.
Yeah. No, I love that
Thank you,
always. Yeah, that's evergreen, man. Yeah, that was episode 1, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, it was 100 episodes. You believe that? 100 episodes ago?
Yeah, almost 10, 12, yeah, whatever.
It's a lot of editing we didn't have to do.
That's crazy.
We need to buy this man a pizza with stuffed crust. You know, we owe it to him. He's done so much. But
Stuffed crust for sure.
yeah, no doubt. But anyway, I guess a resounding theme of this is don't be intimidated by your menu costing. It is absolutely imperative to the success of your business, measuring your bottom line, managing your staff, protecting your longevity as an employee, and keeping ownership and the stakeholders very happy in your performance, which bodes very well for everybody involved. Everybody's more profitable in this instance. So why not do it, right?
Yeah.
So I at least hope in this episode that they can extrapolate or identify an easier way to do food costing that's less intimidating.
Yeah, I think you've helped somebody to really realize that, to say, like, you know what, this doesn't have to be that project that's the elephant in the room that I don't want to take the first bite of. So, no, this is awesome. A couple great tips in here. Check out the show notes, all the information Anthony put together for this episode. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, brother. Much appreciated.
This is a high quality pod. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Adios.
Thank you for listening to Restaurantopia. The gratitude that we have for each and every one of you spending your precious time to listen to this podcast is immeasurable. Please make sure to tell a friend about this podcast. And also, if you have any feedback for us, visit us on restaurantopia.com and drop us a line. You can also subscribe on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Thank you and have a great day.
We are excited to announce the Restaurantopia VIP Text Club. Join by texting the word podcast to 844-928-4257. You will get access to exclusive content, industry news, deals, announcements, pro tips, and more. The VIP Text Club is an exclusive community of independent restaurant owners and professionals. Join today. Message and data rates may apply. Please check our website for our terms of service and privacy policy. We also want to thank our sponsor, Hillcrest Food Service. If you are a local independent restaurant and are looking for a distributor who has chef and operational consulting, provides marketing support, does menu reviews, and most importantly, wants you to be successful, reach out to Hillcrest Food Service at hillcrestfoods.com.
More digestible, and you go 225.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. I love that.
Right.
You know, I also just realized that I left the air conditioner on because it was getting hot.
Yeah.
And I meant to run it and then shut it off.
Yeah,
I left it on. So, Brian, the humming in the background, just, you can take that out.
Yeah, Brian, take it out.
Bitch. This is awesome. I actually am enjoying Brian not being here because we could talk to him and he could hear it later
With no rebuttals.
and laugh.
Yeah,
He
that's
just has
great.
nothing to say.
That's great. Did you hit record on this one?
I did.
Yeah,
Thanks.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Glad we got the calisthenics out of the way. So anyway,